Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first interactive chat session on a very interesting topic, men's mental health. I am Edward Clarke, Dean of the School of Social Science and Interim Dean of the School of Graduate Studies at the University of the Southern Caribbean. And with me are three handsome gentlemen, and I will introduce them to you as follows. In the center, we have Josh Rudder, who I think is known to most Usians. He's a brand strategist, marketing and communication expert who founded Tova Group, a creative agency specializing in branding, digital marketing, and music service. Josh wears several hats as he is also the head of marketing and communication here at the University of the Southern Caribbean. Next to him is a gentleman who is very outstanding in his own field. That is Mr. Chioke Pierre. And he has a very interesting name because that name that sometimes you can't pronounce means gift from God. And therefore his parents just wanted him to remember what a difference he made in their lives. He's a very fun and loving individual who values relationships and truly loves the Lord. That is quite an accolade. He's also the father of two handsome boys, Kemwale and Kaif, and the husband of his beautiful wife, Natalia. And then over on my extreme left is Jameil Blackman. He is the one that ensures that we behave ourselves. He is the pastor, and he works with the Eastern Caribbean Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, and he's currently pursuing a Master's of Arts in Pastoral Theology, emphasis in youth. He's proud and happy to be married to his beautiful wife, and so should he be. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who probably don't know, this month is Men's Mental Health Month. I am sure most of you might have said, men's mental health? Oh, well, you probably missed it, but no, it's the whole month. So that's why we're having this discussion, because, men's mental health is a topic that's normally largely ignored in our society. So before we begin our discussion in earnest, I will make some introductory remarks just to set the scene of what men's mental health is all about and the situation it holds in the global health environment. Now, the mental health of men and boys is often overlooked, even though it can take a significant toll on their lives. When ignored, mental health issues can affect physical health and life expectancy. Untreated, mental health conditions can lead to high-risk behaviors, including substance abuse or misuse, gambling, and other forms of addiction. Unheeded, emotional problems can also cripple a man's ability to fully function in society and within his family, and can even lead to suicidal thoughts and attempts. So, from that, you can gather that men's mental health is important and it should be taken seriously. However, many men may wait to seek treatment. Now, the Mental Health Association of America reports that men, and I quote, men are less likely than women to seek help for depression, substance misuse, and stressful life events due to social norms, a reluctance to talk and or downplay symptoms. Traditionally, we men are awful at talking about our overall emotional well-being, and we will try to find out why that is so. We are good. We generally reply when asked, what is our state? We say, oh, we are good, we are fine. Even though, according to the latest available numbers, men die by suicide 3.63 times more often than women. And 70% of all suicidal incidences are men. That's why it's so important to identify mental health challenges like depression before they become too big to handle. So there's a big difference between everyday stresses and a diagnosable mental illness. Yet it may not always be easy to tell the difference. And it's important to men's mental health to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this forum. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to be able to ask you a few questions. It's an honor. So let's begin, and I'm not going to pinpoint anyone particularly to respond to this, but we always hear that men don't cry. Men are not emotional. It's only the women that are emotional. They cry very easily, but men, we are not emotional. Suppose I ask that to Chioke. What do you think of that view?
I think that view has some merit in it. As we know, you're kind of taught from childhood. That's a particular saying, boys don't cry, boys don't cry. And I think that lends to the reasoning that most people believe that men don't cry, and not only don't cry, but shouldn't cry. Is that true, that men actually don't cry? I mean, I would say probably less than the women do, but I believe men do actually cry.
Or they don't cry for persons to see.
Exactly, they don't cry for persons to see. Yeah. So I think that's not so true that men don't cry. I think they do, but it's not as front-facing as women do.
Yeah. I just want to say, I endorse that, and, we do. It's just that we probably may not do it for everybody to see, and the reality is, as even as what Chioke is saying, is, we are cultured to, hey, be strong, and a sign of strength is not to show your emotion. So crying is not part of it. And if you do, especially like I went to boys' school, crying, you have to take talk, and you gotta.
Unheard of.
No, that don't happen at all. So yeah, that's how we're cultured. Yeah.
Well, but that's interesting. So how do men deal with their emotions? If they are reluctant to cry, they're hurting, they, for many, many reasons, how do they deal with the emotions? Pastor?
I would say we tend to avoid certain emotions. Speaking from that perspective, it's not every emotion that we would want to be seen. There's some that we will allow to be seen, but others we will just probably hold them back because we don't want to seem as vulnerable or being in a vulnerable position. So, we tend to hold them back. Not that they do not exist, but we suppress them, keep them back a little bit so you don't see what's really happening. We put up a front, let people see that we're strong, but really inside, they say you're pudgy. Yeah. but that's the truth. And I would answer as well by saying that we probably don't deal with those emotions the correct way. Mm-hmm. But we tend to hold them back a lot, suppress them, keep them on the low.
Okay. And what are the consequences for men if they don't express their emotions? Because we are told that crying is a form of healing. It cleanses the system. So if you're not doing that as men, what are the consequences of all that stress and hurt and pain that you experience? Josh?
Well, I think we see a lot of reactiveness that comes from us men because of not being able to deal with our emotions as we should. And sadly, we see a lot of domestic violence taking place, a lot of heinous crimes take place because of not being able to deal with our emotions. And again, it's unfortunate, but I think generally we are taught, hey, just keep your. When we talk about being emotional, it's a form. It's like a weakness. It's a form of weakness, and I think out of that sense of thinking it's a weakness, or growing up with that conditioning, we don't know how to react or respond to situations as we should.
Yes.
I think we know as what you normally say in Trinidadians, pressure bust pipe, right? And so that suppression of emotion would sooner or later find its way out.
Yeah.
For some people, it's through violence. For some people, it's abusing external things like alcohol and stuff like that. And sadly enough, for some people, it results in death, as it also takes a toll on their physicality.
Okay. Now, in terms of mental health, what mental health issues do you think can arise as a result of bottling up all this emotion and anger and stress that men experience? What mental health issues or health issues can emerge?
I think a lot of men suffer with anxiety.
Okay.
I believe anxiety is one of those. Because we may not verbally express things. What happens a lot, though, we worry. We have a lot of fears, and anxiety steps in, right? So that's one I have identified and I see. I also believe that a lot of trauma that men have gone through in childhood, I believe it has led to a lot of post-traumatic stress as well. I see that as a major factor. Undealt with childhood issues. Remember, we also face, as being providers, joblessness as well is a big factor too, and the pressures of having to provide for the home as well. And all of that leads to that stress, that post-traumatic stress I see as well. Don't know what the other guys see.
I tend to see sometimes a bit of depression too.
Yeah.
You see a lot of guys are probably sitting and they're staring a lot. They're just in their own zone. You feel a sense of loneliness sometimes, and so I see it sometimes in my realm of being a pastor and whatnot. This aspect of depression. However, once you ask the question, the answer is no. I okay. Yeah. But you can see symptoms of, as you said, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorders. You can see these type of things.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point about depression. So, but how it's generally accepted that depression is a way of life. It's like, this is life, ups and downs. So you go with the ups, you rejoice with the ups. When you're downs, then you feel sad, you're going to be up again. So most men seem to regard these ups and downs as factors of life.
Yes.
So how are you going to be able to identify someone who is hurting and who is depressed? What signs and symptoms do you think are likely to be displayed?
Well, I tend to observe behavior, and you would recognize that some person or a male would tend to find things to occupy time that would keep them away from thinking too much or being in that space of worrying too much. They would leave home, or they leave early and they come back very late.
Okay.
So that they're not in that space alone. They're surrounded by people constantly, in a group with guys, and avoidance of being alone are usually indicators, hey, something isn't right. Home is a place that you love to be, but if you're avoiding home, it means, hey, there's something else going on, especially in what we're speaking of. And so there's some indicators that you can pick up on. You see some person, everyone else is talking, or guys are talking, but you see one person, a guy probably sitting down by himself, you know, he's just deep in thought, staring in one position, or, you know, there's something heavy on the mind, or something of that nature. I'm just speaking based on how I see men operate, you know? And so these are some of the things that I pick up that, hey, there's something taking place, has them in deep thought. Sometimes you even see them, you know, sitting, holding your head. You know, these are just simple indicators that I see that can help you to see.
I think too, when you if you're observing people and if you're around persons that you know, what you may also see is prolonged scenarios. So you don't know them to be in that position for a very long period of time. So in observing now, you realize that they're in this depressed state for a longer period than they would usually be. Because, you know, as you said, we all go through things in life, so it's a roller coaster up and a down. But then you realize that it tends to be more down than up for these individuals. And so that's things that you could observe too as well, as signs of depression.
Well, if I may,
sure.
I've noticed as well, especially sometimes, you know, being guys and we're talking, but a lot of times the conversation is never how you're doing. It's really about life, politics, a lot of conversations that are happening, but the conversations aren't dealing with issues of life or what you
doing?
face here. How are you doing? And I believe those are some signs of distractions to talk about other things and really not deal with, hey, how are you? You know?
Well, you know, I normally say to students in the Masters in Counseling site that if you want to know anything about someone and you really want to know the emotional state, don't ask them, how are you? Because they'll always say,
I'm fine.
I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm cool, you know. But if you ask them, how are you feeling? If you ask them, how are you feeling? That's a different question, and you're likely to get a different response. And they verbalize more about how they're feeling, as saying, how are you? Okay. You know, you can be walking to your suicidal appointed place, and you can say, okay. You know? Yeah, you know. But I want to share some of the symptoms that our listeners and our viewers can identify. Firstly, we have anger. Anger is also a sign of depression, believe it or not. Irritability. You know, sometimes guys are just irritable.
Yeah.
You know, they go home, they're restless, they're irritable. And so what's wrong with you? No, I'm okay. You know, irritability, aggressiveness. And the point you made, noticeable changes in their behavior. Like you're accustomed going to football, or you're going up, all of a sudden, you lost interest in the things that you found pleasurable. That's one of the energy levels. You don't eat in as heartily as you used to eat. You know, now your wife, you know, puts your favorite thing, is, no, I don't feel like that today. And as you pointed out, it's over a 2-week period. You're like this for a period of time, you know, and it's not the flu. You know, it's not the flu.
Normally, Tobanka plays a role there too.
Yeah, Tobanka, yeah. Okay. Difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much. You know, you want to get up, but you're tired. You know, you're always tired. You get up in the morning. Difficulty concentrating. Feeling on the edge. Increased worry, or worrying a lot about, you know, the fact that we're going to have a recession, or you're going to lose your job, or you know, something. Excessive worry, misuse of alcohol, substances, you know, high-risk behavior that some people get into, you know. So some guys, when they leave work and they go straight to the pub or to the rum shop or to the bar, as you call it, and they're there and they're trying to drink their sorrows, you know, out of the glass. Suicidal thoughts, feeling flat or having trouble having positive feelings, losing interest in their partner, you know, obsessive thinking, thoughts or behaviors that interfere with work, family, and social life, and unusual thinking or behaviors that concern other people. These are just some of the symptoms that we pass over, but these symptoms over a period of time can give you some indication of the mental state of the individual. Now, there was an interesting point that individuals, if they remain like in that depressive state, what are some of the consequences that men face when they remain in a depressed state, haven't sought any medicinal support, hasn't talked about it? What's likely to happen to them?
I've seen men lose friendships.
Yeah.
They lose their family. They lose jobs. That's a lot of loss. But you see it start to interfere with aspects of their lives. It changes their demeanor, the type of person they are. It changes so many things in their life, all aspects of their life. For a person who is a Christian, they move away from spiritual things. These are some of the things that you see, or that it affects the aspects of their lives, whether social, mental, spiritual, physical, as you mentioned some of those things just now. So there are a number of things that can happen. It doesn't happen the same way, but there are a number of things that happen as a result of not seeking attention or getting the necessary help for these things that are taking place in their lives.
As a pastor, you have responsibility for, I'm sure, probably more than one church. I'm presuming that. How would you assist a parishioner who you can see is experiencing these moods, this behavior? How can you assist such a person?
Well, with the training that we've received, we've had some form of introductory role in terms of assisting individuals in counseling. So I usually would visit persons, set up meetings with them, invite them to come to church, and then in some cases you recognize, hey, this is beyond my scope, and I make a referral for individuals to professionals in that field specific. I've done it a few times to get the necessary attention and help that's required that I'm not able to provide. But I can usually start off the role helping to give some guidance as to what they can do. But beyond my scope, I usually try to make referrals so that they can get necessary help.
That's important. Yes.
I think what's also vital to do for individuals like that is to shift their focus and their attention. If you focus on the, I had somebody say, if you focus on the lines, all you will see is lines, right? So you try to change their mindset, change their focus, and just letting them see and accept some of the positive things that are still happening to them.
Yeah.
Some of the positive things that are still there. So it's a glass half full rather than a glass half empty.
Yes.
And some of those simple things, they could just take cognition of, hey, I'm alive today. I could walk. I have, all my limbs. I have those kind of things are things that we normally would take for granted. But if you do observe it or take recognition of it, you see that you're still blessed. You still have things to be thankful for. And those are small things that you could start paying attention to as well.
Yeah. Now, I was interested in that, and pleased to hear that, pastors recognize the limitations and therefore, are willing to seek professional assistance. But men are reluctant to go to doctors. And they're even more reluctant to go for counseling.
Yeah, facts.
Right. So how are we going to get him to a place where he is willing to seek that kind of support?
I would firstly say I'm one like that. I mean, firstly, going the fact of going to a counselor is like but why I need to go to a counselor? Maybe the word needs to change. Maybe it is somebody I could go to talk to, probably. but I think it's really firstly accepting that it's you don't need to go to a counselor because you're in a bad state. You could go to someone and say, hey, you know what, I want to have a conversation with you about, hey, Dr. Clarke, I need to talk to you. I'm facing this situation. I don't know how you could guide me through it, And for me, I think it works a little better if it's somebody that I'm familiar with. Reason being is a lot of people prescribe, okay, take 2 tablets and you'll be all right, that perspective, but they don't necessarily go deep in terms of sharing personal things or experiences. So, okay, I know that, Dr. Clarke, you are a psychologist, but of course, part of what you would do, I'm sure, is share experiences with some of your clients, let's say, and it encourages them to say, hey, if you can make it, I can make it too. And I think that's a critical part of it. For me, I show reluctance because I feel like I can't connect necessarily with what you have to say to me. As honest, I'll be honest.
I think the reason for that is, as we would have mentioned earlier in the speaking, is the vulnerability.
Truth.
Men don't like to feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
They don't like to feel less than.
Yeah.
Because being a man comes with a lot of expectation and to fulfill the role, when you have to fulfill that role of being a man, a lot is expected of you.
Yes.
And so any area of vulnerability you try to block up, it's like you kind of see water trying to gush in here, so now we block up that because we don't want to show. And I think that's probably the biggest reason for that, because one, it's 2 things. If you're speaking about going to a therapist, so that's being vulnerable personally.
Yes.
That's sharing some of my deep hurts and my feelings and stuff. And then in terms of a doctor, that's saying that, hey, I'm not as strong as I used to be, or I'm not as able as I'm not 100% of being a man, So all those little vulnerabilities is what we try to avoid, which is what you also said.
And I think, too, one of the reasons we don't really like people in the business that type of way either. So we don't want to share certain things because I ain't letting nobody, I ain't want nobody know nothing. Those kind of things, we approach it. I ain't really want you all in my business. I can handle myself.
And that's it. I think part of it is I'm supposed to handle this.
Yes.
I shouldn't require somebody else to help me in handling this. I can handle this, and so we try to take it on all on our own.
I'm a man. I can handle this.
Correct.
Okay. So you can get over it.
Yeah.
But we know that doesn't really work like that. Yeah, And there lies a big problem for men, that they can get over it, they can shrug it off, they can man up to it, and therefore they delay in seeking medical support, psychological support, or even going to a family member and talking about it, because it's kind of like exposing themselves to ridicule. And therefore the situation gets worse, because if they were treated earlier, then they could get over it and then go back to a healthy state of being. But the longer you attend to the issue, then the more likely it is to stay with you and to disturb you even more. So that's a very interesting. So men believe that they can recover on their own. Okay. But what do you think is the genesis or some of the triggers that cause men to experience mental illness?
That's one big factor I think right now that's happening, and that is by nature, men are provider in our heads, and there's so much of job loss has taken place right now, and that rug being taken from a man is very mentally traumatic. It's very traumatic, and I believe that's one major major factor that impacts on the mental health of men. There's so many others, but I'll just mention that one. I know the guys may have some others.
I've seen to the loss of a loved one, death of some person who's maybe in their life that stability, and suddenly that person goes. The individual, the man is now saying, how do I manage? How do I make it? How do I deal with the things? That person I would go and, mommy, she rub my head. Big man, but mommy rub your head. You go by mommy, she rub your head and that kind of thing. But mommy's gone now. Who does that? And so those type of things, like in terms of especially someone dies or death, or those traumatic experiences usually trigger a lot of mental health and cause instability in the life of men.
What you'd say about men too? Generally, men don't sweat the small stuff. So for them to be impacted in that negative way, it has to be something major. So sometimes most major things, as just talk about job loss, job security, loss of a loved one, all these things are major things that would generally impact on a man, because some of these small stuff we're guilty of not paying much attention to.
A big one too, of course, is breakups. Men handling breakups and relationship. Wow. As a big factor. We see the results of men who can't handle.
I have my own theory where that is.
Well, it'll be good to hear it, but of course.
No, not saying that you're wrong.
Right.
I have formulated a theory why that is.
And I think breakup is a nice word, because there's some other aspects of relationship that is, you know what I mean? When there is someone else.
When you're seeking assistance from off the bench.
So you're alluding to the fact that men deal very badly with infidelity from a partner, and as opposed to
we can't handle.
Why would that cause a man such emotional trauma?
Here's my theory. Men are big on ownership.
Yes.
They pride ownership. They pride being able to say, this is mine. And so when they realize, wait, no, this is not mine only, it hurts them more, because they would have also been showing their vulnerability to that individual. And so women in general, women allow you in, right? And so the man would have seen that this woman allowed me into her special place. When he realized that he's not the only one there in that special place, that affects him negatively.
And why doesn't he think that when he is behaving in an unfaithful way, and the woman is likely to think, this is a special person, he belongs to me, this is my spouse, we had vows, I'm committed. Why is it then that men expect women to just roll over and forget about it, and they can't?
Maybe it's like a king mentality. Everything in the palace is mine.
Yeah.
I own it. It belongs to me. If somebody else come in this palace and take what belongs to me, I am no longer king. I no longer reign, because somebody has dethroned me. And so having that type of king mentality, like, I own all of this, and suddenly you recognize it. Yeah, somebody dethrone you.
Yeah.
You out of sorts. You out of whack.
The other part of that is, as they're saying, why you believe the man thinks he's able to do such and such, and the woman shouldn't.
Yeah.
That also comes from the culture, in terms of men are the attackers. They go to war, they go and do this, they go and do that, and the women are generally behind. So even in our culture, it's believed that the men are able to do more than they should, and have less negative to the same things that women would do.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we know it in society, if a man does this and a woman does the same thing, they get two different types of treatment for that same action.
Yeah. But I seem to think that that's more in keeping with the Western culture than an African culture.
Yeah. Correct.
Because in an African country, you can have an Inyatsi, you can have more than one wife.
Correct.
And the wife, the senior wife accepts.
Correct. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's more Western or
Yes.
or Judeo-Christian philosophy that we follow, because in Africa there's a complete different mindset around that. And
Yeah. No, even with that, as you say,
yeah.
you will find the wife accepting another wife and
Yes,
another wife.
and another wife.
You would not see a husband accepting another husband and coming into his space, you know.
Yeah.
So and that lends it to as well. You see the woman as being more accepting of that type of behavior than the men, you know.
Yes,
So
yes. Okay, interesting. I want to move a bit on the issue of suicide, because in our society here, we see a lot of it, we hear a lot of it. We hear about family suicides, and it's well known in the world of mental health and psychology that more women attempt suicide, but more men commit suicide. I think it's something like 3.25 percent of, more men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Why is that? Why are men, when stressed, when pressured, we heard about men, they don't want to share their emotional states, their anger, their pain, their hurt. Why are they more likely to take their lives than women?
and we say they're more successful at it.
Now they're more successful at it. Okay, but why are they more successful at it then?
I think it goes back to what you were saying just now. When a man has all those things bottled up inside, and there's no avenue to get that out, because this is just from my perspective, because a woman, she may be more emotionally attached. She may cry more than the man. She may talk more. She may have other individuals she can call and talk and cry and talk and cry. And men don't usually operate that way. If it gets to that point, well, we know it's at the extreme. But because there's so much suppression, and that's bottled on the inside, there's no avenue for release or attention or intervention. I believe that's why the action is taken, more so because women may probably be able to find an avenue somewhere, somehow, or some means. I even through watching a movie, or I usually marvel at my wife. Please forgive me. She'll watch a movie and she'll be in tears. But I'm watching the same movie. It's affecting me, and I'm sitting down there and I'm fighting the tears. I'm not showing that I'm crying in this movie. I will not cry. Yeah, but she is all in tears. Yeah, and so even in watching a movie, emotions are able to be released. But here I am as the man sitting down watching that same movie and refuse to allow those emotions to be released. And so I think it's just a matter of not tapping into the avenues or the resources and being trapped with all those things going on and not having that release point.
And then on top of that, you have the expectation as well. Because you are expected, or you would have been expected to say, for example, we're just talking about job loss. You're expected to be the one to bring home the bread.
Yes.
So if you're unable to fill that function, then you kind of question, well, then what is my worth? What is my reason?
Am I a man?
Am I still a man? And I think it goes to what we were saying before. Men don't really sweat these small things, but when big things come in, it affects us in a big way. And once it affects you in that, it shakes you at your core. And I think that kind of drives us to that point. Maybe I could say the women, even being a little more emotional, they attempt, but soon enough they kind of overcome those emotions. They rectify and they self-correct.
They talk about it too.
They talk about it, they self-correct, and so they but when a man is, they share. But I think when a man is shaken to his core, he almost feels there's no use anymore.
But I think just to add, I also believe that men are more socially disconnected than women, and I mean that in the context of men will come together and talk, but the conversations may not necessarily be on emotional or things, hurts and pains and things like that. It's generally not like that. But women, usually when they come together with each other, they talk about life and they see children, what they're going through, the stress they're getting, everything. So I believe we are a bit more socially disconnected, and that impacts on our being able to handle life.
Yeah, I want to make a point here about men ignoring the small things. There are some things called micro-stressors. And very often we ignore those things in life. And we say, you ignore it. But it stays with us, and the micro-stressors accumulate, and they become bigger issues. You get mine? And then, as we say, there's a straw that breaks the camel's back. Then there's something now that's been brewing for a long time, stewing all the time, under fire, and then it just explodes.
Boom.
But so we have to watch the micro-stressors with men, and because those are the things that accumulate. They don't express themselves. They say, I don't like this. I like you to stop that. But because we have this concept for peace sake, and you don't bring it up, and then it becomes it's an issue, but it's not being dealt with, and then the micro-stressor becomes a major stressor, and then you explode.
There's something that I've heard over some time, and I realize that it affects to some degree. There's a term or a phrase or a saying. It goes, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
And the intention of the man is to ensure, not that it's a bad thing, but he's doing everything to ensure that his wife is happy, even ignoring his own happiness. And he is constantly trying to make sure that she's happy, but at the expense of himself. And then he recognizes, that he's in need. And to me, I don't know if it's a micro stressor or a major one, but that builds up over time, and he recognizes, well, nobody in checking for me, like nothing is happening for me, and then boom.
Yeah.
But that's been happening all for a long period of time, relationship wise, and I don't know if the saying is a good saying or a bad saying. Maybe you can help us out.
I know what you mean. So there's no self-care.
Yes.
I have had the experience of Mother's Day is a big thing. I mean, mothers get, and Father's Day is like a pair of socks, a tie,
Vest.
and then children do so much for their mom. When it comes to dad, they're like, okay, but what? Hi, happy Father's Day. I mean, or even ignored. I know I went through that phase for a while, and I was kind of like, so what's wrong with me? Why can't I get the same attention?
Level of attention.
Right, because we are always trying to be the providers and trying to be the one that's working extra hard to make sure everything is okay. And yes, there is that element of it. And sometimes we do feel that we are being neglected. I have had that feeling too, especially when it comes to, I only have 3 daughters. And, so most of the attention goes to the mom of that children. And then it's like, okay, dad can take care of himself. You get it? Oh, yeah, dad he's okay.
Yeah.
He can look after himself.
He will be okay.
Yeah, he will be okay. So they don't know that you need the attention.
But is it because of something that we project that shows that there's you don't have any needs really?
Yeah. We always project that we're okay.
Right.
Yeah. But I think, in summary, I think the thing for men is to realize that ignoring depression will not make it go away.
True.
They need to seek some form of psychological or medical, psychiatric intervention to deal with their condition, depending on how severe it is. What other mental, because we've been talking about depression and suicide, what other mental conditions do men experience from your own knowledge of what other things? I know you mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder. We talked a bit about anxiety, but there's one other that I see from my experience that I've seen more men suffering from this than women, and that's schizophrenia, psychosis. They're on the streets. They're talking to themselves. They
Another reality.
yes, that they're just moving around and talking to birds, and but you don't see women experiencing schizophrenia as much as men do. This is interesting aspect, and it's really one of those conditions that is largely ignored in men. We talk more about depression, but we talk very little about schizophrenia. Anyone wants to have a go at it?
I think now that you say it, I think I'm paying more attention to it.
Yeah.
Because I think normally we'll see, especially homelessness in men, as probably drug abuse. Right. And so we wrap it all in one big bow of it all being drug abuse. But you're correct. Some of it is mental illness, and it just can't be in the home anymore. And it doesn't have to be because of abusing drug. Maybe that came into the play after. But you're really thinking about it. You really do see a lot of men homeless than women.
I think to one of the ways that impacts that a lot. Generally, men take their physical, their health, their body for granted. Sometimes we a day goes by and we ain't eat really. I see Chioke do her raise the eyebrows. I hope I didn't expose you to but not knowing that the nutrients that we put in helps us to be able to function properly. Sometimes our rest is broken up. We sleep late, or we out long hours working and that kind of thing. And these things tend to play on the mind. Because if the mind is constantly going and working and not getting the rest, then there comes that point in time where you have a nervous breakdown, or some of these things can take place, and they tend now to graduate into bigger things if they are ignored, or you don't pay attention to what you're really doing to your body, and it lends. So it's not only the drugs or abuse or alcohol or whatnot, but sometimes the way how we condition our bodies, or the lack thereof, that tends to affect that mental state or capacity, and we find ourselves with nervous breakdown. Sometimes we experience strokes and these kind of things, and they throw us out of sorts, and we end up in these positions where we're not able to function in our jobs. So we lose our jobs, we can't provide for ourselves. Then we're homeless, we're on the street. It's a compounded thing, but it started from maybe how we were operating, conditioning ourselves before.
Well, the researchers noted it's mixed, but more research studies have shown that men have a high incidence of schizophrenia than women, and this is associated with the fact that significantly more men abuse drugs or misuse drugs. And we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about cocaine, we're talking about
heroin,
all of these serious heavy drugs, and therefore those drugs.
And the ones we don't know about, yeah.
And those drugs, have psychotic outcomes for them. You lose your mind, and you want to fly, and then you want to do things that is beyond reality, and it's very interesting that some musicians indulge in, these substances to give them greater insight into so they can hear,
the artistic abilities.
Yes, but it goes beyond that, of course. It goes beyond musicians and artists and stuff, because we see lots of people. They started for recreational purposes. You go to a party and you just take a spliff or you just smoke but I have noted that when individuals start indulging in these practices at an early age, that it is quite impactful on their ability to function. So the younger you start misusing or abusing these substances, the more impactful it will be on your psyche. And we are told that it normally starts in men between ages 18 to 25, and women between 25 to 35. But probably the reason why we see more men than women is that the women seem to respond to treatment, to the neurotropic drugs better than men. And then men seem to start it at such early age that it becomes quite an established process. I'm just thinking about a number of young men that I know that started misusing these substances, in particular cannabis, at a very early age, and it really impacted them. They had dropped out of school, they just lost purpose and direction. And these were very, very smart kids, So misusing these substances, they, do have a serious impact on the chemistry, brain chemistry.
I now that you've said it, it caused me to reflect on younger days. I play a lot of football, and guys I grew up with on the football field, maybe playing in the neighborhood or playing on teams with them, having then to be introduced to drugs, and you watch their football decline. Everything, it starts to go downhill. They become so dependent upon it, Before they start to play, they gotta get in something. After they play, they gotta get in something, And you watch not only their level of football, but every aspect of their life then start to decline. And it was amazing, to see individuals that I grew up with running around in the neighborhood, and watch their quality of life now. It is totally gone. Some individuals I actually see them in person and you can't recognize the person anymore. You see some of them actually on the streets. It's something that it affects me because I grew up with this individual. I ran around in the neighborhood with them. I played football together with them. But now I see this individual and I'm shocked as to how it got to this point. But as you said, it starts at that 18 years old, and by the time they're 25, it's all up in smoke. So it's a reality. I see it. Yes. I'm still seeing it right now.
Okay, I also want to just talk a bit about the fact that there is a concept that when you're mentally ill, you're violent, you're mad. You're a lunatic. To put it, when we think about someone that's mentally ill, we think, he's a madman, right? And that's quite interesting because in our society, that's a fact, and people see it as a threat.
The mental institution is the madhouse.
Yes, So, and it's interesting that when you are diagnosed as mentally ill, people get very suspicious, that you're going to be violent, your behavior is
Unpredictable.
unpredictable. Do you think that that in some way impacts men's unwillingness to seek help, medical help?
I think firstly, I think that the
Physical
two are not
ways.
necessarily tied. Pardon? Sorry?
Because of the stigma
Yeah, I think,
associated
yes.
with mental.
Yeah, I think that it's the violence is undealt with issues in life.
Yeah.
So I believe violence in itself that is not necessarily tied to mental illness. I think mental illness, you have various reasons why people will develop mental
Yes.
illnesses, but I see the violence aspect of it as other issues in your life that have been not undealt with, and of course your response to not being able to handle it, you interact or you react violently. So that's just in terms of my thoughts in relation to the two. Yeah.
It can be ignored. There is a stigma attached. Anytime a person hears or gets
True.
information that you are receiving treatment or your mental treatment, automatically, this man mad boy. Let me go watch this man, you know.
That comes about from anything that needs treatment is not well.
Yeah.
So something is wrong.
Right.
Something is wrong, you
Which
know?
is why I was wondering if there needs to be a rebrand and some of the words used in relation to counseling or.
That's your field, man. You're branded
Maybe
man.
a lot of people use the word coaching now. Coaching. You know, I'm a life coach or mental or mindset coach, let's say.
Or wellness coach.
Or wellness coach.
But
I
yeah,
dare not. I'm thinking about myself now, and I will be honest. I would have some reservation if getting treatment in going around to say or to tell individuals, you know, man, I had to go down the road and get some treatment, you know, everything not.
I'm going to take my medication.
Yeah, you know, they told me I had to come back, you know, twice a week, and you know, people start to something wrong with this man, like everything not together up there, you know.
Yeah,
I would have reservations in saying that
Yes.
because I know how persons will respond.
Yes.
I would have to do that in secret, you know, like how Nicodemus came to Jesus, you know. I come by night. You got night appointments. I don't really want people seeing my vehicle driving in this place, you know, because automatically I'm associated with being mad or something is
I'm visiting Dr. Clarke a lot.
yeah, man. Seeing you know in the office fairly regular. Everything all right? So there is a stigma, and I think that's one of the major reasons why men would not want to, if it's something that can be private,
Yeah.
I can do it from the comfort of my home
Yeah.
and not have to be seen in your establishment.
Yes.
I would do it. But to tell me to catch transport or drive and come down there and people see me going there on a regular basis, unless you're going to send different vehicles so people can track the numbers and them kind of thing, you know. I'm more willing to go, yeah. But if it's going to be seen as consistency, I would want to avoid that because I'm going to be labeled, and it may even affect after that the quality of life that I have. Because some persons may distance themselves from me because they don't know the full picture.
Yes.
Then you have rumors going around, and then people start avoiding
And
you.
then Trinidad is a small place. So
And,
you have
and
fear.
Barbados even smaller. So it's a whole basket of things that you're dealing with as a result of that stigma that's attached.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, even on campuses we have to camouflage where the counseling offices are because if someone sees you going into the counselor, I wonder what's wrong. You know, somebody's going to ask a question. You know, but we need to create an awareness, and this is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So we need to create an awareness in the minds of men, in spite of all that we have said just now about stigma, that when they are unwell, that they need to seek help. I mean, if you have something physically wrong, you go to the doctor. You seek help. So if there's something wrong with you emotionally or mentally, then you need to seek help. And the issue about stigma associated with mental ill health isn't going to go away tomorrow. But if the mental health condition persists, then it has detrimental, serious detrimental impact on family, on you, on family life, and on your ability to function.
Yeah.
There's a saying that there's no health without mental health. You know, you could be how rich, you could be how poor,
Yeah.
you could be how big and strong and whatever. If you don't have mental health, you're crippled. You know. So we need to create an awareness among men in the society that they need to view their mental health as something sacrosanct, something very, very, very important, and something that they can and should do something about, you know, because of the way it impacts their life. So, in summary, I just want to begin with you, Chioke. How would you like the listeners or the viewers to take away from this discourse?
We need to understand ourselves, understand the quality of life that we would like to have, and as men, understand that we are not perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Even though the expectation of perfection might be required, we aren't perfect. And similarly to how we may not try to build a house on our own, you know, we will have other friends and laborers and other people participating in that particular function. We also should allow other persons to participate in our wellness as well. One of the things, as we said, men don't like to look vulnerable. Certainly to probably even a stranger. So it's nice to associate yourself with a group of healthy people, even if it's healthy men who have a healthy lifestyle, healthy outlook on life as well.
Yes.
And you put yourself in those circles so that you could benefit from those experiences. You can benefit from that circle, and it could bring about some of that healing until you're ready to take the next step to get some professional healing according to how much assistance you may need. You know, but just look for small avenues where we can be open. I mean, sometimes it would be difficult. Of course it would be difficult. It's taken us out of our comfort zone. But nothing would be achieved in your comfort zone.
Yeah, I believe, and it's a spin-off from what Chioke is saying, I believe it's important to have community, for men to have community, whether it to become a part of a community or create a community of men who sharpen each other, and because I believe there are a lot less men's groups and communities than there are women's communities and groups, and I believe we need to, as men, find those, create those, and I also believe it's so important for men to share life and the experiences that we go through, because I believe in sharing. Even sometimes some of the struggles, it brings healing as well. Yes, I know it's easy for us to think about safe spaces, but what I've learned in part of healing, my own personal healing, is just sharing and talking about life and some of the things you've been through, because when you encourage others based on what you've been through, it actually encourages you to keep going as well. So that's something I firmly believe in, especially to help in mental growth as well. And finally, I believe there comes a point when you go through difficult parts in life as a man. I believe in spiritual healing strongly and firmly, and I've reached. I remember going through a very difficult point in life, and God had to say, "All right, Josh, you've been through the hurts, the pains, the grief, but it's time now to pick up yourself and go again. And I believe we could just go again. I believe so too, you know.
Okay, yes.
And I'll just pick up from where Josh ended. I believe there needs to be a deep trust in God. And I did, I look through scripture and I see individuals who struggled mentally. And probably a good place for persons who maybe experiences is to read the Psalms. And you look at David and how he is being open, how he's talking to God. He's speaking from his heart about what he feels, how he feels. He feels despondent. He feels in despair. My enemies are upon me. He confesses, the wrong that he has done. God, what's happening in my life, He's being real and he's being open with God. And God sends solace. He sends assurances. He sends promises. He sends messages to lift David from the place where he's at and put him in a better position. Even Elijah, he said to God, take my life. But God sends reassurance. And I would want to encourage anyone who is in such a position that God is real and you can trust him. He will send encouraging words. He will send individuals to help you. And all the help that you need, he can provide through persons, through professionals, through persons specializing in areas. And you can still receive the necessary help that you need. But a deep trust in God, I think, helps individuals a long way to get help and assurance that they can make it through these challenges that they face.
There's one last thing I would say. Men are already deemed to be ignored by society and not valued and not recognized. So let us as men not be guilty of doing that to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Chioke, Josh, and Jameil for their contribution to our discussion today. On the Men's Forum, we were discussing men's mental health, and this is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I hope that you have benefited, I have, from our discourse, and this is just the beginning of a series of sessions that we're going to have every month on various topics. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Thank you, listening and viewing audience, and may the Lord continue to bless you. And before we go, we'll ask Pastor Blackman to say a word of prayer.
Sure. Let's pray. Heavenly Father God, we thank you for this occasion, this moment we had as men to share in these challenges that we face. It is not a regular thing, God, that as men we speak and we talk and we share. But I think that this was a beautiful occasion, maybe to help someone out there know that it's okay to talk, okay to share, okay to experience and show emotion. Some man is listening right now, and as a result of this experience today, he is in a better place. And we thank you for this opportunity. We ask, God, that your blessing would be upon us. My panelist friends, Josh and Chioke and Dr. Clarke, we pray, Lord, that you will continue to be with us. Help us to be instruments to encourage others, to help them along this way. And we give you praise and thanks for all the victories that will be won. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.